Hey everybody, welcome back to Lettermen Row. I am Austin Ward, joined by my good friend Tim May. This is a little bit of a rapid reaction as the college sports landscape has changed a little bit. Maybe not as much as the NCAA would have you believe, but it is a notable change that Gene Smith and Dr. Michael Drake were part of this working group that was working towards name, image, and likeness compensation for players. It's been a long time coming. Tim and I have talked about this as a possibility for a long time. Gene Smith joined that committee and that working group last year when it became obvious with other states starting to pass legislation to move towards this to allow players, most notably college football players and college basketball players, to cash in on their own name in any number of ways. Now they're finally saying that they can. But Tim, first of all, you've covered the sport a long time. So how significant is today that the NCAA is finally changing some amateur rules? And B, we can dig into a lot more from there, but what was just your initial takeaway from that conversation this morning?
Well, it's significant in the fact that you remember last fall when some of this stuff was starting to trickle out that the NCAA might be considering it. I asked Gene Smith, they kind of brought this on themselves by kicking the can down the road. And he basically said, you're right. But it's hard to get, how many schools are in the NCAA now? I've lost count, but in the just in the FBS, or it's not the FBS, but Division I for football, there's 128 or 130 schools, and it's hard to get even that number of people to agree on changing rules to the extent of making money available to players that wasn't there before. And we'll get into the Pandora's box. It truly opens in a moment, but I think it is significant. It is definitely a milestone in the progression of for major college football and basketball players, without a doubt. How much this is going to affect soccer or women's lacrosse or anything like that, probably not very much. Maybe initially just when people are jumping on the bandwagon, but it's significant in the fact that this does allow players to, in essence, trade on their own significance or their own reputations. This isn't exactly what I was talking about, though, long before. I was talking about them being able to partake a little bit more in the money that's already being developed and earned by big-time Power 5 schools. That's a big difference from what we're talking about right here.
Yeah, I think that's a clear, and maybe someday down the road they're going to have to look at this again and change, and that's why, the NCAA is asking the federal governments to step in and mandate what they can and can't allow, because you're looking at what they approved or what they're trying to bring into the NCAA is stuff where you're not allowed to wear your jersey to do an advertisement or use Ohio State logos or the Big Ten logo or whatever school or conference it may be, because they're still trying to fight against this you're not an employee, that the schools are compensating them directly. At some point, that's the last wall that's standing. I think at some point that may well come crumble down, but this is a step towards that to try and hold it off. I don't know how much longer it'll last, but that's why you kept hearing this word. Gene Smith was hammering it over and over, guardrails. It's going to be hard right now with what they're proposing for students to actually navigate it and find out what they can and can't do and who signs off of it and who's monitoring. I think that is going to be maybe an issue they run into there, Tim, but it's at least a concession that they need to figure out something, because today was not the law is not the rule is not in place right now. They're saying, hey, this is what we think right now, and then people are going to vote, and it could change by January. But as it is right now, it's at least some progress, but maybe not as much as people might think.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is you still have the impression that the schools want to in some form or another have a clearinghouse for want of another term for what players can and can't endorse. I don't know where this is going to go, but do you want your star running back endorsing a strip club? Seriously, that could happen. You think back into Ohio State's past, that could definitely have happened, back in the but I won't go there, back in the mid 2000s. But I digress, obviously. But that's the point. It's like, the guardrails are very important here, because on the one hand, you want to give the players, the athletes, the freedom to pursue pretty much what they want to pursue. On the other hand, it has to. You have to have some guard against them going overboard or being taken advantage of contractually. Or is every player now going to have an agent when he's in college to set up these endorsements for like a automobile company or like I said, a strip club, restaurants, whatever they can do, or to set up their autograph sessions. Are players going to be allowed to, after the opening game, let's say 2 years from now, are the players going to be allowed to have tables set up outside Ohio Stadium where they can sell their autographs? We've all seen the crowds outside, especially after a big win.
Yep.
What are the guardrails here? And the idea that you can't have guardrails or shouldn't have guardrails is ridiculous. It's folly. Even the NFL has guardrails. You can't, as a player. I heard James Laurinaitis talking about this today on the Bishop and Laurinaitis show, or whatever it's called, on 97.1 The Fan. That if you were a player and the NFL or your team had a contract with Coke, you couldn't do Pepsi commercials, or at least you couldn't do them in your team jersey or your NFL logo. So there definitely have to be rules, and then there have to also be rules because there has to be some sense of making it a fair play for all the schools in the league. And that's where it's really going to get goofy. You know this, Austin. Ohio State is not like Purdue. Ohio State is not like Ohio U by any stretch. And the idea that you're going to go into this and players not understand that if you go to Ohio State, once you're even being recruited by Ohio State, your reputation jumps immediately. So your worth to somebody is already jumping because you're already getting more famous, or you're being recruited by Alabama or by Clemson or whatever. And then, what's going to stop those schools from putting together packages? Hey, if you come here, you're going to get a car dealership endorsement. But just think, man, if you lead the league in rushing, you're going to get even more. You know what I mean? You've got to have some kind of guidelines, rules about that, but will those stick in court? I don't know, because otherwise you just run amok. Here's what I truly believe before you get your opinion in, though. I truly believe that it's going to be like an explosion to begin with, and that's what you and I talked about before. And then I think things are going to settle down because car dealerships may figure out, hey, this isn't really helping our bottom line. A shoe company may figure out, hey, we're not really selling more shoes because of this. Let's rein this in a little bit. That's what will happen. But the initial explosion will be pretty huge.
Yeah, I think that, and I've shared this with you before and others when they've asked, is this going to revolutionize and change recruiting and shift the balance of power? No, I don't believe that it will. I think that it will solidify programs even more. It will strengthen Ohio State. It will strengthen Clemson. It will strengthen Alabama. And because all the things that already exist for them, with their cranking out NFL draft picks, when they have the nicest facilities, when you have the academic reputation of Ohio, all those things already exist, and they will still matter. And if you're trying to add on top of that, Ohio State has more compliance officers than almost any school in the country. They will help navigate players through that. That's getting way in the weeds, but if you factor in the metro area of Columbus, Ohio State is only going to benefit from this. Well, the other argument is, does Nike want to just buy a program like Oregon? And well, in some ways it already has, but it can't turn its back on Ohio State. It can't turn its back on Florida or the Jordan brands or Michigan, because if it starts favoring one school over the other, you're going to go look for a different company to make your stuff. Well, yeah. What about Chicago or Rutgers? Couldn't businesses help fund that? There's more Ohio State fans in Chicago than there are Northwestern. If they wanted a spokesperson there to appeal, Justin Fields is still going to be the pick anyone on Northwestern's roster, Clayton Thorson or whoever from the past. Any Ohio State player is going to carry more weight. So from that perspective, I think you've seen it with T. Boone Pickens in Oklahoma State, and some oil money that changes some things for programs in Texas, and that's a whole nother argument with the economy right now that I'm not even going to get into. But that stuff, businesses have to see a return on it. And where would you most likely see that? You're still going to see it at the schools that have the best coaches, have long attracted the best players, and have the most commitment to winning. You can't build that overnight or sustain it, in my opinion. And I think that's, to your point, maybe you see people that pony up to get a 5-star to go to whoever, Colorado. I don't know. But you're not going to do that over the long haul because it won't make sense, and it's not going to really help turn them into an overnight sensation.
And this is what's interesting too. While you're talking, I wrote a story long ago for the Dispatch, Columbus Dispatch, from one of our I think it was a game day cover story about who was the biggest name in town. This was back then. Who was the most recognizable name in town? Rick Nash, the star, #1 draft pick of the Columbus Blue Jackets, or Terrell Pryor. Who would you recognize on the street in Columbus more readily? Rick Nash, and that's an NHL professional team, or Terrell Pryor, the quarterback then of Ohio State. Whether you liked him or not, he was extremely well recognized, as even he found out. But that's what's different about Columbus and Ohio State than like Northwestern in Chicago, Minnesota Gophers in Minneapolis. That's what sets big-time college football programs especially apart, or Duke basketball. Those players are really recognizable. They can do more from a promotional standpoint if you're a business than, like right now, Justin Fields or Foligno, from the Blue Jackets. Who's more recognizable? Who has the chance to be the Heisman Trophy winner and possible #1 pick if there in fact is a season this coming year? Justin Fields. It's crazy what the box you're opening here, and the think that you can do that and just let it be a free for all is crazy. That's why, as Gene Smith said, you have to have rules. I mean, because the 128, 130 schools in Division I, you got to give them some semblance of a level playing field, even though we all know that doesn't exist.
Right.
But you have to play. The reason you have to do that is, like you brought up Oregon, people have to have people to play. You can't just have 8 teams out there. And then you can, but that wouldn't last very long because most of them would have losing records. So it's just to me, it's just that moment. This is a definite not fork in the road, more like a crossroads. You're going to take this right-hand turn here now, but where's that leading? Nobody really has a grip on. But we're definitely headed into a strange new world. That is for sure. You and I and Berm one time Jeremy Birmingham had a conversation in the hall with an Ohio State assistant coach who will not be named. But like he said, if you move to this point, and this is where we've gotten to now, where a guy has an endorsement deal with let's say a car dealership in town, and they want to shoot his commercials, at one point in the day, and he's got to go to class because he has to maintain eligibility. I mean, you can't just say, well, this is pro football, forget about class even. And he's got football practice and meetings, but he's got to work in his either his appearance or his commercial shooting time into his day or his week. You know how coaches are. That's not going to go over real great but if it's the superstar, which will be that guy, that'll be the guy you're talking about here. You probably aren't going to put up with it, right? Because he's a difference maker. He's the reason you are where you are. But to think that this isn't going to just kind of throw things into a little bit of a disarray is really naive.
Yeah, there are going to be lasting and certainly dramatic changes inside locker rooms, inside athletic programs as everybody adjusts. I think that in the long haul, and we're going to probably talk about this a lot more on your podcast in the coming weeks, that the amount of money is probably not going to wind up being all that significant to the players except for a couple few. I think that there are great opportunities for volleyball players or golfers or whoever to start providing individual instruction. Maybe they're allowed to do some events, and that's great. I think that stuff should absolutely happen. And that's the fact that they're willing to make those concessions is notable right there. But when we're talking about the sport that you and I have covered for our professional careers, thinking about all the ways that this will reach out and spiderweb and impact college football you can't even forecast how difficult that will be. But they at least took one step here. So I think we'll probably process some of this, Tim, and we'll get back to it.
Let me give you one more example before you sign off.
Sure.
Though I remember when I've told you the story before, I was staking out, but Ryan Miller and I, from Channel 10. I just ended up getting in the van with them because they were the same place I was one day, and I can't remember the photographer. We were sitting outside Maurice Claret's rental condo or whatever it was back when he was under investigation. Yeah. And there were some little kids in the neighborhood. They came riding by, and we just started talking. I started talking to this little kid. I said, well, are you surprised that Maurice has got this like really nice, it was like an orange, day-glow orange, orange metallic, let's say, vehicle. I can't remember what it was. And he goes, no. I go, why? He said straight face, he goes, he's the biggest name in town, the biggest sports star in town. And I started thinking, it's been that way. I remember coming back from a road trip, and we used to have our own planes at the Dispatch long ago, and we're landing, and I'm thinking Keith Byers, I forgot what game it was, but Keith Byers had just had a hell of a game. And as we're coming over the lights of Columbus, I'm going, you know what? The biggest name in town right now, all these lights and everybody, probably people watch this game, is Keith Byers, and he really couldn't cash in on that, at least legally. These players couldn't. Legally, as in NCAA rules I'm talking about. And so the conversation has been out there forever. Why aren't they able to make something of, and we all know the rumors and some of the proven things that where you've seen them get money under the table, over the table, around the table, things like that. I'm not just talking about Ohio State, but around the country. You've seen those things happen. Well, just pull the covers back on that, and that's why I think this is a good move, because it takes that aspect of it, that aspect of players selling memorabilia to get tattoos, and Ohio State going on big-time probation for it. Are you kidding me? That's so stupid. It was so stupid then, and now the NCAA is out front saying that's stupid. Why would they cost somebody eligibility or team vacating wins, which by the way never happened except in the record book, if you follow my drift. So yeah, I think this is a good day, but it's kind of like when the United States, when it won its freedom from Great Britain, okay? Now all of a sudden they had to sit down and write a constitution. They had to have rules, right?
Yeah.
That's where we're at now. Now you got to have rules. Okay, this is your freedom, but these are going to be your restraints on freedom. This is where you're going to be able to go and not go and do and not do, because if you have an organization, you got to have rules.
Yeah, I can't top that analogy, so that's probably a good place for us to wrap it up here with a little bit of reaction to the name, image, and likeness, ongoing progress there for the NCAA, trying to basically make sweeping changes that will alter the college football, college athletic landscape. Appreciate Tim May jumping on with me today to break it all down. I'll have a lot more on that and everything else at Lettermen Row. For Tim, I'm Austin Ward. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Lettermen Row.
We got Letterman Live, we've got the practice report, we got rapid reaction. Hey, and we got Buckeye IQ with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Berm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Lettermen Row.